Welcome to Dark Wilderness, where I share encounters with the unexplained. If you have a story you would like to share, please email it to me in the link below. And if you like today's story, please gently slap that like button, as I'll be uploading 3 to 5 times every week. So please would knock that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future content. Now, let's get into today's encounters. This story is most commonly referred to as the Mike Wooley Encounter, and it happened in Keachai, Louisiana back in 1981. It happened in December, which was a Louisiana deer season. See, Mike was a very avid hunter, and on this particular day, he was going to go spend the evening doing what he loved to do the most, and that was to go spend the evening in his deer stand and hope to try to get himself a deer. See, where Mike hunts is down this little logging road, and it runs for about a mile and a half. And every time Mike went out there, he would always park his truck in the exact same spot. He would park in about halfway down that logging road, and then he would walk the rest of the way to his stand on foot. So on this day, this is exactly what he did. He got out there, it was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He parked his truck halfway down that road, got out of his truck, grabbed his gear, and then walked the rest of the way into his stand. When he got to his stand, he climbed up and he settled in for the hunt. Mike was up there for about 30 minutes before he heard a noise off to the east. So he hears this noise, so he focuses his attention and he's looking to the east, and all of a sudden this doe came barreling out of this real thick brush. She came running out right towards him and went right underneath his stand, and then she bedded down. Now that's not something deer typically do, and that's exactly what Mike was thinking. He was wondering, why did this doe just come bed down right under my stand? So he's looking down at her, and he realizes this deer is just soaked. She's just soaked with sweat, which means she's been running hard. So Mike instantly figures, okay, it's definitely a buck. That's why she was running. So he started to get excited. And so he's looking around. He's trying to find this buck that was chasing the doe. And all of a sudden, on the corner of his eye, off to the east, about 20 yards away from him, he spots this dark figure in that thick brush. So he turns and he's looking at this thing. And first he figured it was a person in a gorilla suit, figuring it was somebody coming to try to scare him out of his deer spot. So he's pretty mad. So he actually starts yelling at this figure, and he's yelling, take off the mask, take off the costume, this isn't funny, this is no joke, what are you doing? And this thing's just staring at him. So now he's kind of starting to notice that something was off. So he actually lifted up his rifle and he was looking through the scope. And even though this thing wasn't that far away, it was in thick brush, but he could see its face perfectly through his scope. And he can make out all the different facial features. He could see its eyelashes, and he could see the steam coming out of its nose and mouth, because it was about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So it was pretty cool outside, so it was very easy for him to see the breath. So he's looking at it through his scope, and now he's starting to think, okay, what is this thing? And the first thing that popped into his mind was a feral human. He said he had read up on those as well as Sasquatch, but he figured that they were just myth and legends. But so now when he's looking through the scope and he sees this thing, he instantly realizes that this is something he doesn't know, and it's definitely real. So he's starting to get a little bit nervous. And this thing all of a sudden just lets out this deep, guttural growl. And as soon as it growled, off to the northeast, 100 yards away, Mike heard this long, sharp whistle, almost like it was a response to this growl. So as soon as this whistle finishes, this being in front of him lets out the exact same whistle. So now Mike's getting even more nervous. And after a couple of minutes of just staring at this figure in front of him, he can hear movement coming from the direction where he heard that first whistle. So now he's figuring that this creature has a buddy that whistled from the northeast, and that's coming. So now he figures he's going to be on the losing end of that fight. So he instantly climbs down his stand, and he's going to start heading back to his truck. Well, as I said, where he normally parks is halfway down that logging road. So he had about a 3/4 of a mile walk back to where his truck was. So he's going back to his truck, and he can hear that figure that he was looking at following him through the bush on his left side. So Mike starts picking up the pace, and he's running down this road, and the whole time this figure to his left is just crashing through the bush, barreling through it like nothing. And Mike said that bush is so thick that if a person was to try to walk through it, they would just get all cut up. But this creature had no problem just charging through it. So Mike's running down the road, and the whole time he's thinking, okay, this thing's going to get me. So he's running just full bore for his truck. And as he's getting closer to his truck, he starts to think that once I get to my truck, I have to stop so I can unlock it so I can get in. And when I stop, this thing's going to get me, and that's going to be it. So right as he's getting up towards his truck, he swings his rifle to the left and fires a warning shot. When he fired this warning shot, it hit about 7.5 feet up a tree, and it was about 3 feet ahead of this creature. So when his round hit that tree, it actually blew bark apart, and that bark flew and hit this creature in the face. Mike figures that's what gave him enough time to get into his truck. So Mike got into his truck, he's trying to start it, gets it started, and he floors it to leave. As he was driving away, he looked in the rearview mirror, and when he looked in the mirror, he could see on the road 2 figures. So that first creature's buddy that had whistled 100 yards northeast of where Mike was sitting had been coming down that road right behind Mike as he was running to his truck. Mike never looked behind him while he was running because he was just focused on getting to his truck and focused on that creature running slightly behind him to his left because he figured that was the one that was going to get him. Now, Mike has done a lot of interviews about this particular encounter, and he has one very important piece of advice that he says is a very important piece of advice. And he says if you happen to encounter one of these creatures while you're out hunting or in the woods and you have a firearm, he recommends not picking your firearm up and aiming at one of these things. He said because that'll just tick it off. And he said one of these creatures ticked off is not an encounter that you're likely going to be able to walk away from. Well, that's it for today's encounter. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.